The wind cut like glass that night. Snow drifted down over the empty train station, muffling the world in silence. It was close to midnight, and the last train had already gone. A man stood alone near the platform's edge, his black coat dusted in white. The few flickering lamps caught the sharp lines of his face, the faint stubble, the eyes that watched everything but revealed nothing. His name was Luca Moretti, a name whispered across cities with equal fear and respect. The mafia boss of Verona. He was supposed to be invisible tonight, waiting for a courier who never came. Instead, he found himself listening to the soft sound of footsteps approaching from the dark. Small, hesitant, almost trembling, he turned slightly, hand instinctively brushing against the inside of his coat where his gun rested. But what he saw wasn't a threat. It was a girl. 16, maybe 17. Her clothes were thin, soaked from the snow, her shoes too worn for winter. In her arms she held a small bundle, not much bigger than a cat. She stopped a few feet away from him, shivering so hard her teeth chattered. For a second, neither of them spoke. The world seemed to hold its breath. Then in a voice barely above a whisper, she said, "Sir, can I slip under your coat?" Luca froze. No one, not in years, had spoken to him like that. Not afraid, not defiant, just desperate. His first instinct was to ignore her. He wasn't the kind of man who played savior, but something about the way her hands trembled, or maybe the faint cry that came from the bundle in her arms. It wasn't just a bundle. It was a baby. He blinked, his composure cracking for the first time in years. "That's a child," he said quietly. The girl nodded, her lips blue. "Please, she hasn't eaten since morning. The shelter's full. They told us to wait outside." Luca's jaw tightened. He had seen a lot in his life. Betrayal, greed, blood. But this was different. A child in the snow didn't belong in his world. Still, something inside him shifted. Without another word, he opened his coat. "Come here," he said softly. The girl hesitated, her eyes searching his face, sensing the danger but too cold to care. She stepped forward, slipping under his coat. The warmth hit her like a wave. Her head barely reached his chest, and for a second, she seemed to melt against him, trembling as the baby whimpered between them. Luca looked down, his heart pounding for reasons he couldn't name. Her hair smelled faintly of rain and soap, her voice barely a whisper. "Thank you," she said. He didn't answer. He just stood there, the snow falling heavier around them, wondering how a night meant for business had turned into something else entirely, something he couldn't walk away from. If this moment gave you chills, hit like, because this night, at that frozen station, was the beginning of everything Luca Moretti didn't know he was missing. The girl's trembling didn't stop even after 10 minutes beneath Luca's coat. Her small body was still shaking from cold, but now her eyes fluttered open wider, adjusting to the light that came from the old street lamp. She looked up at him for the first time. Her voice came out hoarse, almost fragile. "You're not from around here, are you?" Luca didn't respond. He kept his gaze fixed on the empty tracks, his mind running through the schedule. The courier who never arrived, the message that should have come by now. Everything about this night was wrong, and yet he couldn't bring himself to move away from the girl pressed against him. She didn't seem to notice his silence. She kept talking in that broken, soft rhythm, her breath fogging up his coat. "My name's Clara, and this is Mia." She lifted the blanket just enough for him to glimpse the baby's face, pale, sleeping, with lips trembling from cold. Luca swallowed hard. He wanted to tell her to leave, to go find someone else. But the image of the tiny face burned into his mind like a scar. "You shouldn't be out here," he muttered finally. "It's below freezing." Clara gave a weak laugh, the kind that didn't belong to a child. "You think I don't know that? But nobody lets us in. They say I'm too young and the baby—" She stopped herself, hugging the child tighter. "We were waiting for someone who never came." Her words hit him harder than he expected. "Who?" he asked quietly. Clara bit her lip. Her father. The way she said it made something twist inside him. He'd heard that tone before, in women who'd been promised the world and left with nothing but silence. Luca didn't ask again. He simply looked toward his car parked by the curb, the black SUV idling in the snow. His driver waited inside, confused but silent, as always. "Come on," Luca said finally. Clara blinked. "What?" "You'll freeze to death if you stay here." "Get in the car." Her instinct made her take a step back. "I don't even know you." Luca met her gaze, unflinching. "And you're standing at midnight in a storm with a baby. You don't have the luxury of knowing anyone right now." For a moment, she didn't move. Then, something in his voice, maybe the steadiness, maybe the weariness, made her trust him. She followed, clutching the baby close as they stepped through the snow. Inside the car, the heater hummed softly. The sudden warmth made her eyes water. She slid into the seat, holding Mia near the vent. Luca gave his driver a small nod. "Drive." "To where, sir?" Luca's gaze stayed on Clara's reflection in the window. "Somewhere warm." The city lights blurred past, streaking through fog and snow. Clara leaned her head against the glass, whispering softly to the baby, her words too low to catch. Luca watched her in silence, the way she cradled the child, the way her hand trembled but never loosened its hold. He had seen 1,000 deals and 100 betrayals. But this, a girl, a newborn, and the quiet sound of survival, it made him question everything he thought he'd buried. She turned to him after a long silence. "Why are you helping us?" He didn't know the answer, not yet, but he said the only thing that came to mind, "Because no one helped me when I needed it." She studied him for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "Then maybe tonight we both got lucky." Luca didn't smile, but his chest ached in a way that wasn't pain. Maybe she was right. Maybe luck had nothing to do with it. Maybe fate had just changed direction, and as the car disappeared into the storm, neither of them realized this drive, this single act of mercy, would unravel the walls both of them had spent their lives building. If this part made you curious about what happens when kindness meets danger, drop a comment with AI, because in the next part, one phone call will change everything. The girl's trembling didn't stop even after 10 minutes beneath Luca's coat. Her small body was still shaking from cold, but now her eyes fluttered open wider, adjusting to the light that came from the old street lamp. She looked up at him for the first time. Her voice came out hoarse, almost fragile. "You're not from around here, are you?" Luca didn't respond. He kept his gaze fixed on the empty tracks, his mind running through the schedule. The courier who never arrived, the message that should have come by now. Everything about this night was wrong, and yet he couldn't bring himself to move away from the girl pressed against him. She didn't seem to notice his silence. She kept talking in that broken, soft rhythm, her breath fogging up his coat. "My name's Clara, and this is Mia." She lifted the blanket just enough for him to glimpse the baby's face, pale, sleeping, with lips trembling from cold. Luca swallowed hard. He wanted to tell her to leave, to go find someone else. But the image of the tiny face burned into his mind like a scar. "You shouldn't be out here," he muttered finally. "It's below freezing." Clara gave a weak laugh, the kind that didn't belong to a child. "You think I don't know that? But nobody lets us in. They say I'm too young and the baby—" She stopped herself, hugging the child tighter. "We were waiting for someone who never came." Her words hit him harder than he expected. "Who?" he asked quietly. Clara bit her lip. "Her father." The way she said it made something twist inside him. He'd heard that tone before, in women who'd been promised the world and left with nothing but silence. Luca didn't ask again. He simply looked toward his car parked by the curb, the black SUV idling in the snow. His driver waited inside, confused but silent, as always. "Come on," Luca said finally. Clara blinked. "What?" "You'll freeze to death if you stay here." "Get in the car." Her instinct made her take a step back. "I don't even know you." Luca met her gaze, unflinching. "And you're standing at midnight in a storm with a baby. You don't have the luxury of knowing anyone right now." For a moment, she didn't move. Then, something in his voice, maybe the steadiness, maybe the weariness, made her trust him. She followed, clutching the baby close as they stepped through the snow. Inside the car, the heater hummed softly. The sudden warmth made her eyes water. She slid into the seat, holding Mia near the vent. Luca gave his driver a small nod. Drive. To where, sir? Luca's gaze stayed on Clara's reflection in the window. Somewhere warm. The city lights blurred past, streaking through fog and snow. Clara leaned her head against the glass, whispering softly to the baby, her words too low to catch. Luca watched her in silence, the way she cradled the child, the way her hand trembled but never loosened its hold. He had seen 1,000 deals and 100 betrayals. But this, a girl, a newborn, and the quiet sound of survival, it made him question everything he thought he'd buried. She turned to him after a long silence. Why are you helping us? He didn't know the answer, not yet, but he said the only thing that came to mind. Because no one helped me when I needed it. She studied him for a long moment, then nodded slowly. Then maybe tonight we both got lucky. Luca didn't smile, but his chest ached in a way that wasn't pain. Maybe she was right. Maybe luck had nothing to do with it. Maybe fate had just changed direction. And as the car disappeared into the storm, neither of them realized this drive, this single act of mercy, would unravel the walls both of them had spent their lives building. The hum of the car engine blended with the soft breathing of the baby. Clara had fallen asleep, her head resting against the door, her small frame still wrapped in Luca's heavy coat. Outside, the city lights faded into the blur of snow and night, leaving only the rhythm of the windshield wipers and the steady beat of rain. Luca sat back, his eyes fixed on the road ahead, but his mind wasn't quiet. He hadn't planned to take anyone in tonight, especially not a girl who reminded him of a part of himself he'd buried long ago. Every rule he'd ever made for survival was built on distance, but something about her silence, the way she didn't ask for more than warmth, was unraveling that distance fast. His phone buzzed in his coat pocket. One vibration, then another. Private number. The sound snapped him back to reality. He answered with a curt, "Talk." A voice low and urgent filled the line. "Boss, it's Paolo, the courier's gone. Ambushed on the south road. Someone knew the route." Luca's eyes narrowed. "Who hit them?" "We don't know yet. But there's chatter about someone leaking details. They mentioned the station, sir." His grip on the phone tightened. "The station?" "Yes. Word is someone was watching you there. You might have been followed." Luca's gaze shifted instantly to the backseat mirror. Clara was still asleep. The baby pressed against her chest, the rise and fall of her breathing steady. She looked harmless, too fragile to be a threat. But he'd learned long ago that danger rarely came wearing a warning. "Find out who was there," he said quietly, hanging up before Paolo could respond. The driver glanced at him through the mirror. "Everything okay, sir?" Luca's tone was calm, but his eyes were sharp again, the warmth replaced by instinct. "Just drive. No stops." He turned slightly, studying Clara again. Her lashes fluttered against her cheeks, her lips moving faintly in sleep, maybe whispering a name, maybe a prayer. He hated that part of him wanted to believe she was innocent. But the timing was too precise. A missing courier, an ambush, and a girl appearing out of nowhere. He looked down at the baby, wrapped tightly in a threadbare blanket. No identification, no bag. Nothing but that small bundle, and her voice asking to hide under his coat. The car slowed as they approached a narrow road leading toward the city's quieter outskirts. The street lamps grew dimmer, the night heavier. Clara stirred, blinking awake. Her voice was drowsy. "Are we there?" Luca's expression didn't change. "Almost," she rubbed her eyes. "Where are we going?" "A place where you won't freeze," he said simply. She nodded, her voice softer. "You sound like you don't trust me." He looked at her then, his gaze unreadable. "Trust isn't something I give easily." Her lips curved faintly, not in offense, but in understanding. "Then maybe you're smarter than most people I've met." The driver turned into a long gravel driveway. Ahead, through the fog, a tall iron gate came into view. Guarded, silent, unmistakably private. Clara straightened slightly, her eyes widening as she saw the mansion beyond it. "This is where you live?" she asked, whispering as if afraid to be heard. Luca didn't answer. The gates opened with a slow metallic groan, the car rolling through into a world she'd never imagined. Warm light spilled from the windows. Men in black coats stood near the entrance, watching silently as the car approached. Clara's pulse quickened. She clutched her baby tighter, every instinct warning her to run. But where would she go now? The car stopped, and Luca turned toward her, his voice low but steady. "You can stay here tonight. After that, we'll see." She frowned. "We'll see?" He leaned closer, his gaze unwavering. "Because I don't know yet if you're the person who brought trouble to my doorstep, or the reason I survived it." Before she could respond, the baby began to cry softly, the sound echoing in the cold air. Luca looked down, his heart tightening again against his will. The heavy wooden doors of the Moretti mansion creaked open, letting in the cold night air as Luca stepped through first. His men lowered their heads respectfully, though their eyes darted curiously to the shivering girl behind him. She looked out of place in every possible way, fragile, soaked, holding a newborn wrapped in nothing but a thin blanket. Clara hesitated at the entrance. The grand hallway beyond looked like a dream she wasn't supposed to enter. Polished marble floors, gold-framed paintings, and chandeliers glowing like captured sunlight. She clutched the baby closer, afraid her wet shoes might stain the floor. Luca handed his coat to a servant without a word and turned to her. "Follow me." His tone wasn't unkind, but it carried a weight that made her obey. Her footsteps echoed softly behind his as they moved deeper into the mansion. Every corridor seemed endless, the air filled with warmth and silence. Finally, he stopped outside a guest room, one that hadn't been used in years. "You can stay here for the night," he said. "The fire will be lit in a minute." Clara stepped inside carefully. The room smelled faintly of cedar and lavender, the kind of scent that belonged to safety, a luxury she hadn't felt in months. The bed looked impossibly soft, and before she could stop herself, tears filled her eyes. "Thank you," she whispered. Luca paused in the doorway. He wanted to say something, anything, but words didn't come easily to him. Instead, he simply nodded and turned to leave. But just as his hand touched the door, her voice stopped him. "Why are you helping me?" He froze for a moment, then said without turning around, "Because the world's already cruel enough." The door closed softly behind him. Down the hall, Luca's steps slowed. His instincts were still restless. The call from Paolo replayed in his head. Someone was at the station. Someone watching. The courier's death wasn't a coincidence. And now, a girl with no past had appeared at the exact same time. He needed answers. He turned a corner, heading toward his private study. The moment he stepped inside, the familiar scent of cigars and aged wood grounded him. A file lay open on his desk, the courier's assignment details. South Road, confidential delivery. Target Luca Moretti, but something was wrong. The courier's notes mentioned an address, a safe house near the old station. His jaw tightened. That's where she had been. He picked up the phone. "Paolo, I need surveillance from the station cameras. I want the footage from the last 4 hours." "Already pulling it, boss. But there's something else. The girl. We ran her name through local shelters. No record. No ID, nothing." Luca's voice hardened. "So she's a ghost." There was a pause. "Maybe not a ghost, sir. Maybe protected." Luca frowned. "By who?" "The name she gave at the station. Clara Vega. That's not random. Vega was one of the families your father worked with 20 years ago. They disappeared after the Rivera massacre. Every single one of them wiped out. Except maybe her," Luca finished quietly. He hung up slowly, the pieces falling into place in his mind like broken glass. Clara Vega, the last survivor of a bloodline erased by his own father's enemies. The baby, perhaps the last heir. He should have felt suspicion. Instead, he felt something else, a pull he couldn't explain. He returned to the hallway, walking quietly toward her room. The firelight flickered beneath the door. He hesitated, then pushed it open just enough to look inside. Clara sat on the floor beside the fire, her back to him, humming softly to her baby. Her hair was still damp, her shoulders fragile under the borrowed blanket. She looked like a ghost from another life, something beautiful that didn't belong in his brutal world. Luca should have closed the door and walked away. Instead, he stepped inside. On the table near the crib sat a small, worn photograph, something she must have pulled from her pocket. He picked it up before she noticed. It showed a man holding a baby. Not this baby, older, faded. But the man's face. Luca froze. He knew that face. His father. The fire cracked behind him, and Clara's quiet voice broke the silence. "You shouldn't be in here." He turned slowly. She was watching him now, eyes wide, fear flickering like a shadow. Luca held up the photo. "Where did you get this?" She rose to her feet, clutching her baby protectively. "It's all I have left of my family." His voice was low, dangerous, but not angry, curious, almost broken. "That man. You know who he is?" Clara shook her head. "No. Just that my mother said he was the reason we lost everything." The room felt smaller suddenly, the air heavier. Luca set the photo down carefully, his mind racing. His father, the man he'd spent years trying not to become, was somehow tied to this girl. And for the first time in years, Luca Moretti didn't know whether fate had brought him salvation or punishment. Luca didn't sleep that night. He sat in his study long after the fire burned out, the old photograph still lying on his desk. The edges were frayed, the image blurred, but his father's face was unmistakable. He'd seen that expression only once before. The rare softness in a man who'd built an empire on fear. But why was his father holding a Vega child? Why had he kept that hidden? By dawn, the first light crept through the curtains. Luca poured himself a glass of whiskey he didn't touch, staring at the frost spreading across the windows. His thoughts kept returning to Clara, her fragile voice, the way she'd said he was the reason we lost everything. The words echoed like a ghost he couldn't silence. A knock came at the door, soft, hesitant. He didn't need to ask who it was. "Come in," he said. Clara stepped inside quietly, the baby asleep in her arms. Her hair was braided now, her eyes clearer, though still shadowed with exhaustion. She stood near the doorway, unsure if she was allowed to walk closer. I just wanted to say thank you for last night," she said. "You didn't have to help me," he nodded once. "You shouldn't thank a man before you know his reasons." Clara tilted her head slightly. "Then tell me yours." For a moment, he almost did. He almost told her about the photo, about his father, about the possibility that her pain and his were woven together long before either of them could stop it. But something stopped him. Maybe pride, maybe fear. "You had nowhere else to go," he said simply. "That's reason enough." She smiled faintly, as if understanding there was more he wasn't saying. "I'll leave as soon as the road's clear. I don't want to be a burden." He looked at her for a long moment, his voice calm but firm. "You're not leaving until I find out who's after you." Her breath caught. "Who's after me?" Luca leaned forward, eyes sharp now. "You didn't just appear at that station by chance, Clara. You were running." "From what?" Her gaze dropped to the sleeping baby. "I told you, from the shelters. From the cold." He stood slowly, stepping closer until his shadow fell over her. "From the cold, yes. But not just that. You've been looking over your shoulder since the moment I saw you. You flinch at every sound." She tried to speak, but her voice broke. "You wouldn't understand." "Try me," he said softly. For a moment, she said nothing. Then, with a trembling breath, she began to hum, a faint, haunting tune. It was slow, mournful, like something remembered from another life. Luca frowned. "What is that?" "My mother used to sing it," she whispered. "Before they came. Before who came? The men who burned our house. Who said the Vegas had debts to pay?" Luca's chest tightened. "How old were you?" 8, her voice cracked. "They said my mother betrayed someone powerful, but I was too small to understand. She died protecting me. All I remember is her voice, that song, and a man's name she whispered before she went silent." "What name?" he asked, barely breathing. She looked up at him, her eyes glistening in the dim light. "Moretti." The room fell into silence. Even the baby seemed to stop breathing for a second. Luca felt the world tilt under his feet. He turned away, walking toward the window, his pulse loud in his ears. His father's face in the photo burned in his mind. Everything, the timing, her fear, her name, it was all connected. Behind him, Clara shifted uncertainly. "Did I say something wrong?" He didn't answer at first. When he did, his voice was low, distant. "No. You said something that might finally make sense of everything." She took a hesitant step forward. "What do you mean?" Luca turned back to her, his eyes softer now, almost haunted. "It means your past and mine aren't strangers, Clara. They've been chasing each other for a long time." The baby stirred in her arms, and she looked down quickly, rocking her gently. "I don't want trouble. I just want to keep her safe." Luca's voice dropped to a whisper. "Then stay close to me, because whoever came for your family might come for you again. If this part gave you goosebumps, leave AR in the comments, because in the next part, one unexpected visitor at the mansion's door will prove Luca's warning right." The snow hadn't stopped falling when the knock came. A single, deliberate strike against the heavy oak doors that echoed through the silent mansion. It was barely sunrise, the world outside still painted in the pale gray of early morning. Luca was already awake. He'd been pacing his study, thoughts tangled between the name Vega and the memory of his father's sins. When the sound came, his instincts flared immediately. No one ever came to his door without warning. He glanced at the security feed on his desk monitor. A man stood outside the gates, wrapped in a dark coat, hat pulled low. The cameras caught his face as he looked up, just enough to make Luca's stomach tighten. "Paolo!" Luca called, and within seconds, his right-hand man appeared in the doorway, half-dressed, alert. "Boss? There's someone at the gate." "Says nothing. Just waiting." Paolo leaned over the monitor. His jaw tightened. "That's Enzo Lattori. Used to work for the Rivera family." Luca's expression hardened. The Riveras were long gone, or so he thought. "Let him in," he said quietly. Paolo frowned. "You sure, boss?" Luca nodded once. If he's come this far, he's not here to waste time. Moments later, the heavy front doors opened, and Enzo stepped inside, shaking off the snow. His face was weathered, his movements careful. He looked like a man carrying more than secrets. "Morning, Enzo," Luca said, his voice calm but sharp as glass. "You picked a dangerous hour to visit." Enzo gave a small, tired smile. "It's the only hour they're not watching." Luca motioned toward a chair by the fire. "Talk." Enzo hesitated, glancing toward the staircase, where, just faintly, a soft lullaby drifted down the hall. Clara was awake upstairs, singing to her child again. "Who else is in the house?" Enzo asked. "My concern, not yours," Luca replied coldly. "Now what do you want?" Enzo took off his gloves, revealing hands marked by old scars. "You found her, didn't you?" Luca didn't answer, but his silence was enough. Enzo sighed. "Then it's already started." Luca's tone dropped. "What started?" "The cleanup," Enzo said. "They're finishing what your father couldn't." Luca's jaw tightened. "Speak clearly." Enzo leaned forward, his voice low. "Years ago, your father made a deal with the Vegas. He promised protection in exchange for silence. But when one of them broke that deal, he ordered their family erased. Every last one, except one child escaped. They've been hunting her ever since." Luca's hands curled into fists. "Why now? Why after all these years?" "Because she's grown up," Enzo said. "And because she's not just a Vega anymore. That baby she's carrying, they think it's yours." The words hit like a gunshot. Luca's breath caught, but he didn't move. The silence between them thickened, pulsing with disbelief. "You're wrong," Enzo shook his head. "Am I? You've been seen with her. The girl from the old family. The one everyone thought was dead. It doesn't matter if it's true. They'll use it against you. They'll use her." Luca turned away, his reflection in the window dark and still. Outside, snow drifted over the courtyard like ashes. "Who's leading it?" Enzo hesitated. "One of your own." "Someone close." A knock on the door interrupted them. Paolo again, face tense. "Boss, we've got movement outside the east wall." Black sedans. "No plates." Luca's eyes darkened. "Get everyone in position." He turned back to Enzo, voice quiet but lethal. "You brought them here, didn't you?" Enzo shook his head quickly. "I came to warn you." "Then start praying you're right." Luca said, pulling his gun from the desk drawer. Because if Clara or that child gets caught in this, I'll finish what my father started. But not the way he would have. He strode toward the stairs, boots echoing against the marble, the faint lullaby growing louder, Clara's voice, soft, innocent, unaware that danger was already surrounding them. At the top of the stairs, she appeared in the dim light, baby in her arms, worry etched across her face. "Luca, what's happening?" He looked up at her, the girl with his father's past in her blood, and maybe his future in her hands, and said quietly, "You need to trust me now. No matter what you hear, you don't open that door." The first gunshot came like thunder, slicing through the dawn, then another. The echoes bounced off the mansion's stone walls, rattling the chandeliers. Luca's instincts took over instantly. No hesitation, no fear, just precision. "Paolo, get the east wing sealed," he shouted, his voice cutting through the chaos. "No one comes in or out unless I say so." Outside, black sedans were parked across the snow-covered driveway, engines still running. Men in dark coats poured out, rifles gleaming under the cold morning light. They weren't street thugs. They moved like soldiers, organized, paid well, and they knew exactly where they were going. Inside, Clara clutched her baby tight, her trembling body pressed against the wall at the top of the stairs. The noise below was deafening, gunfire, shouting, breaking glass. The baby whimpered softly, and Clara bit her lip to keep from crying out. Luca sprinted through the hall, his men falling into formation behind him. Every corridor became a battlefield, every shadow a potential threat. "Move!" he barked, ducking behind a marble pillar as bullets shattered a nearby window. "Boss! They're coming from the back gate too!" one of his men yelled. Luca cursed under his breath. "They're trying to trap us in." He grabbed his radio. "Marco, cover the rear hall. No one gets upstairs. Protect the girl!" Upstairs, Clara pressed her back against the nursery door, whispering to the baby. "Shh, sweetheart. It's okay, it's okay." But her own voice was trembling. The warmth from the fire downstairs had vanished, replaced by the icy draft of fear. Then, footsteps. Heavy ones climbing the stairs, she froze. The handle turned slowly. "Clara!" She almost collapsed with relief when she heard his voice. Luca appeared, face smeared with soot, shirt half torn, gun still smoking. "We have to move," he said. "They're here, aren't they?" She whispered. He nodded once, his jaw tight. "They're here for you." She shook her head, eyes wide. "Why me? Why can't they just leave me alone?" "Because they don't want you alive, Clara," he said quietly. "They want to erase what your family stood for. What my father did to them. They want to finish it." Tears welled in her eyes. "And you?" "I'm not letting that happen." Before she could reply, another blast rocked the house. The lights flickered and part of the staircase crumbled. Luca wrapped his arm around her shoulders. "Stay close." They moved fast, down the servants' corridor, through the kitchen, every corner echoing with gunfire. His men fought to hold the line, shouting orders, returning fire. The mansion that once whispered luxury now screamed survival. Outside, snow was stained black with smoke. A grenade went off near the front fountain, sending shards of stone across the lawn. Paolo's voice crackled through the radio. "Boss, we're outnumbered!" "Then we make it count," Luca said. "Fall back to the tunnels." "The tunnels?" Clara asked, clutching the baby tighter. He gave a faint, grim smile. "My father built them under the estate during the old wars. Never thought I'd need them again." As they reached the cellar stairs, she stumbled, nearly dropping to her knees. Luca caught her, steadying her gently. "I've got you," he murmured. For a split second, their eyes met, his filled with fire, hers with fear, and something unspoken passed between them. Not just protection, connection. "Go," he said, motioning to the open hatch beneath the wine cellar floor. "Stay there until I come for you." "I'm not leaving you," she said, shaking her head. He smiled faintly, the kind of smile that looked almost foreign on him. "I've survived worse." She hesitated, then whispered, "Please come back." He brushed a strand of hair from her face. "I always do." Then he turned, grabbed his gun, and disappeared into the smoke-filled hallway. Clara climbed into the tunnel, clutching her child, listening to the chaos above. Every sound, every scream, every echo felt like a countdown to something she couldn't stop. In the distance, over the crackle of flames and gunfire, she heard Luca's voice shout, "Protect the girl at all costs!" Before everything went silent, the tunnel was cold, damp, and eerily quiet. Clara sat on the dusty ground, clutching her baby against her chest, the faint echo of gunfire above them slowly fading into silence. Every heartbeat felt like thunder in her ears. She couldn't tell if the fighting had stopped, or if it was about to reach them. The baby stirred, letting out a soft cry, and Clara quickly rocked her, whispering, "Shh, it's okay, sweetheart. We're safe. He'll come back," he promised. But deep down, her stomach twisted with fear. Promises didn't always survive in a world like Luca's. Then, footsteps. Muffled but distinct, coming closer through the tunnel. Her breath caught. She pressed herself against the wall, pulling the baby close. "Luca?" she whispered. No answer. The steps grew louder, heavier. Whoever it was, they weren't trying to hide. Clara's pulse spiked. She reached for the small metal rod lying beside her, part of the old tunnel's framework. Her only weapon. The faint glow of a flashlight appeared, bouncing off the tunnel walls. Then a voice, low but familiar. "Clara?" Relief washed over her so fast she almost sobbed. "Paolo?" He nodded as he approached, his face grim, gun still in his hand. "It's over, for now," he said. "Luca sent me to get you," she exhaled shakily. "Where is he?" Handling the last of them. "You're safe down here." Something in his tone made her pause. There was no warmth in it. None of the rough protectiveness she'd heard from Luca's men before. Just distance. Paolo's eyes flicked to the baby. "That's her?" he asked. Clara's fingers tightened protectively. "Yes, why?" He gave a small smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Cute kid. Shame she was born into this mess." Clara's stomach sank. "What do you mean?" Paolo took a slow step closer. "You really don't know, do you?" Her grip tightened on the metal rod. "Know what?" "That baby," he said softly, "is worth more than any of us alive." Clara shook her head, confused. "What are you talking about?" He sighed, almost pitying. "There's a price on her head, and yours. The Vega bloodline was supposed to be erased years ago. The Morettis made sure of that, but somehow you slipped through the cracks. Now every old family wants the last of the Vegas gone for good." She swallowed hard. "Luca. He wouldn't let that happen." Paolo's smile darkened. "Luca doesn't know the half of it. You think he found you by chance?" "No, Clara. Someone told him exactly where you'd be." Her voice broke. "That's not true." He leaned closer. "You were bait." The truth hit like ice. Her chest tightened. You told them where I was, didn't you?" Paolo's silence was answer enough. Clara stepped back, heart hammering. "You betrayed him." He shrugged, his voice cold. "I did what I had to do. You think I want to die cleaning up Luca's ghosts? The family's offered me a way out. Your location for my freedom. And since you were walking right into his world anyway..." Her hand trembled around the rod. "He trusted you." Paolo's eyes hardened. "He shouldn't have." He raised his gun. But before he could aim, a single deafening shot echoed through the tunnel. Paolo froze, eyes wide, then collapsed. Behind him, Luca stood in the darkness, his gun smoking, his face unreadable. He walked forward slowly, the echo of his boots cold and deliberate. "You were right," he said quietly, eyes locked on Paolo's lifeless body. "He shouldn't have." Clara stood frozen, trembling, the baby crying softly in her arms. Luca stopped a few feet away, his voice softer now. "I told you not to open that door." Tears filled her eyes. "I didn't..." "He came down here. He said you sent him." "I know," Luca said, kneeling to check Paolo's pulse before standing again. He was feeding them information. "For months. Why didn't you stop him?" she asked, her voice cracking. Luca's jaw clenched. "Because I needed to know who he was selling it to." He turned, grabbing her hand firmly. "Come on, we're leaving. This place isn't safe anymore." As they climbed back toward the cellar, Clara's legs shook beneath her. "Luca, will they come again?" He didn't look back. "They already have, and now they'll pay for it." But as they reached the light again, Clara glanced once more at Paolo's body, and for the first time, she saw what Luca's world truly meant. Every betrayal came with a body. Every secret came with a cost. The storm outside had settled into a quiet drizzle by the time Luca and Clara emerged from the tunnel. The air smelled of smoke and gunpowder, and the once grand mansion now stood scarred, windows shattered, walls riddled with bullet holes, the remnants of chaos scattered across the marble floors. Clara held her baby tighter, following Luca through the wreckage. "Where will we go now?" she asked softly. Luca didn't answer at first. His mind was somewhere else, not on the bodies being dragged out by his men, not on the smoke curling from the broken chandeliers, but on a question that had haunted him since Enzo's visit. What else had his father hidden? Finally, he said quietly, "There's something I need to see before we leave." He led her down a hallway lined with portraits, solemn men in black suits, each one with the same eyes. The Moretti eyes. Luca stopped before a heavy wooden door at the end, one he hadn't opened in years, his father's office. "Stay close," he said, pushing the door open. The air inside was thick with dust and silence. Shelves of old ledgers lined the walls, the scent of cigars still faint in the air. Everything looked untouched, as if his father had only stepped out for a moment. Luca walked straight to the desk. He opened drawers with precise, practiced motions until he found what he was looking for: a small, leather-bound journal. Its spine cracked as he turned the pages, filled with his father's tight, angular handwriting. "What is that?" Clara asked quietly. "My father's records," Luca said. "Every deal, every debt, every betrayal he ever wrote down." She frowned. "Why keep something like that?" "Power," he said simply. "Knowledge is the only weapon that outlives a gun." He flipped through pages of coded notes, addresses, and old family names, until one word made him stop cold. Vega. Clara froze when she heard it. "That's my name." Luca said nothing at first, his eyes scanning the entry again and again. The words were written nearly 2 decades ago. Debt settled through silence. One survivor secured for leverage. Name, Clara Vega. Must remain hidden until the time comes. Luca's pulse thundered in his ears. "He knew you," he whispered. "My father knew exactly who you were." Clara's face went pale. "I don't understand. What does that mean?" He looked up slowly, his eyes burning with disbelief. "It means my father spared you. He didn't kill your family, not completely. He kept you alive. Why?" She breathed. Luca's voice dropped lower. "Because you were meant to be used. A way to control the Vegas if they ever rose again." "But he never told me." "Not once." Clara stumbled back, shaking her head. "So all this, me finding you, none of it was chance?" Luca shut the journal, the sound sharp in the quiet room. "Maybe it started that way. But what happens next? That's not his choice." "It's mine." She met his gaze, tears blurring her eyes. "And what is your choice, Luca?" He stepped closer, his voice steady, but his expression cracked with something human. "To end what my father started. To make sure no one ever uses you or that child again." Clara's voice trembled. "Even if it means turning against your own blood." He smiled faintly, but there was no warmth in it. "Family doesn't end with blood, Clara. Sometimes it begins where bloodshed stops." Just then, Paolo's phone, still in Luca's coat pocket, buzzed. A single message flashed on the cracked screen. "Unknown number." The girl's location confirmed. "Proceed with the plan," Clara gasped. "They're still coming?" Luca's eyes darkened. "No, they were already on their way." He turned toward her, voice calm but cold. "Pack what you need. We're leaving in 10 minutes. Where will we go?" "To finish this," he said. "To the last person who knew my father's deals, and the one name he trusted even less than his own." As thunder rolled in the distance, Luca slid the journal into his coat pocket. The war wasn't over. It had just remembered his name. The drive was long and silent. Snow fell in soft waves against the windshield, blurring the world into gray and white. Clara sat in the passenger seat, holding her baby close, her eyes flicking nervously between Luca and the endless road ahead. His knuckles were pale against the steering wheel, his jaw locked in a grim line. She wanted to ask what he was thinking, but she already knew. He was replaying every word from that journal, every lie his father had left behind. Finally, she broke the silence. "Who are we going to see?" Luca didn't look at her. "A man named Salvatore Romano," Clara frowned. "That name, I've heard it before." "You should have," Luca said quietly. "He was my father's right hand, until he wasn't. When my father died, Salvatore disappeared. Took whatever secrets he had and vanished from the city. But if anyone knows the truth behind that journal, it's him." The baby stirred in her arms, letting out a tiny whimper. Luca's eyes softened just slightly. "She needs rest. We'll stop soon," Clara nodded. "Luca, what if Salvatore doesn't want to be found?" He gave a humorless smile. "Then he shouldn't have left a trail." By the time they reached the outskirts of the mountains, the storm had thickened. A small cabin came into view, old, wooden, tucked between pine trees. Smoke curled faintly from the chimney. Luca parked the car a few feet away and stepped out, his boots crunching through the snow. He motioned for Clara to stay inside. "If anything happens, drive. Don't wait for me," her voice caught. "Luca, no. I'm not leaving without you." He met her eyes, something unspoken passing between them. Not the cold command of a mafia boss, but the quiet understanding of a man who knew she'd already lost too much. He nodded once, then turned toward the cabin. The door opened before he could knock. An old man stood there, tall but frail, his hair silver, his eyes sharp and alert. "I was wondering how long it would take you to find me," he said, his voice gravelly but calm. "You have your father's impatience," Luca's jaw tightened. "And you have his secrets," Salvatore chuckled softly. "Come in before you freeze. You've traveled far to hear something you might not like." Inside, the cabin was warm and filled with the scent of burning cedar. Old photographs hung on the walls, black and white images of men in suits, families smiling, and faces that looked hauntingly familiar. Salvatore gestured to a chair. "Sit," Luca ignored it. "Tell me about Clara Vega." The old man's smile faded. "Ah, so that's why you're here." He poured 2 glasses of whiskey and set one down in front of Luca. "Your father's last sin." "Talk," Luca said coldly. Salvatore sighed, sitting across from him. "Your father didn't just run the Moretti Empire, Luca. He held it together through betrayal. One of those betrayals came from the Vega family, Clara's father, to be exact. He tried to expose your father's dealings with the government. Your father retaliated." Luca's fists clenched. "He wiped them out." "Almost," Salvatore said. "But when he found the child, the baby, he couldn't do it. He said something I'll never forget. The sins of the fathers shouldn't fall on their daughters. So he spared her life and gave her to a family far away, paid them to protect her. But he didn't tell you, because he knew one day she'd come back to test your bloodline's worth." Luca's voice was low, dangerous. "And you knew all this?" Salvatore nodded. "I did. And when I saw her name appear again in the city records, I knew it was time. History doesn't repeat itself, Luca. It escalates." Luca stood pacing. "Someone's after her. They attacked my house. Paolo betrayed me." "I know," Salvatore said quietly. "The ones hunting her aren't after revenge. They're after what her father left behind." Luca turned sharply. "What did he leave behind?" "A document," Salvatore said, lowering his voice. "Proof that could bring down every major family in this city, including yours. It's not about power anymore. It's about survival. Whoever holds that document controls the entire criminal world." "And you think Clara knows where it is?" Salvatore gave a small, knowing smile. "I think she's already carrying it." Luca froze. "What?" "Not literally," the old man said. "Her father encrypted it, hid it in something she owns. Something passed down to her, maybe without her even knowing." Luca's mind raced. The necklace she never took off, the locket with the faded photo, the one she said was her mother's. He didn't say a word, but Salvatore saw the realization in his eyes. "Ah, you've already guessed." Outside, Clara sat in the car, staring through the fogged glass. She couldn't hear them, but she could feel something had shifted. Luca's silhouette in the window looked darker, heavier. She whispered to herself, "What are you hiding from me, Luca?" Then the sound of another car engine broke the quiet. Headlights appeared through the snow. Clara's heart skipped. Someone else had found them. If that ending gave you chills, drop a in the comments, because in the next part, the men in those cars aren't strangers. They're from Luca's past. The headlights cut through the falling snow like knives. Clara's fingers tightened around the baby's blanket as two black SUVs rolled to a stop just beyond the trees. For a moment, there was only silence, the kind that presses against your chest and refuses to let you breathe. Inside the cabin, Luca froze mid-step. His instincts kicked in before his thoughts did. "We're not alone," he muttered, hand reaching for the gun at his waist. Salvatore didn't look surprised. "They followed you," Luca turned on him sharply. "How?" the old man sighed. "There are men who've been watching me for years. You showing up only told them where to find what they were looking for." Luca's jaw clenched. "Then they're here for her." Salvatore nodded slowly. "And for you, boy. You're the last Moretti who can stop them." Luca didn't waste another word. He bolted for the door, stepping into the cold night. The snow stung his face as he scanned the tree line, shadows moving, spreading out, disciplined and silent. They weren't amateurs. From the car, Clara saw him draw his gun, the faint glint of metal flashing under the headlights. Her breath caught. "Luca," she whispered. Then the first shot rang out. The windshield cracked as a bullet punched through it, missing her by inches. She ducked instinctively, curling over her baby. "Oh God!" Luca fired back, the sound echoing like thunder in the forest. "Stay down!" he shouted. Salvatore appeared in the doorway, rifle in hand. "They're not stopping this time. Whoever sent them wants the Vega line wiped out tonight," Luca shouted over the gunfire. "You said her father left a document. Where is it?" "In something she carries," Salvatore replied, reloading calmly. "If you want her to live, you'll have to destroy it before they find it." Luca's mind raced. Clara's necklace. That locket. It had to be it. He turned toward the car, sprinting across the snow as bullets tore into the ground around him. The headlights caught his face. Fierce, unflinching, focused only on her. Clara looked up just as he yanked the door open. "Out!" he barked. "Now," she hesitated. "But now, Clara." She climbed out, trembling, clutching the baby to her chest. Luca grabbed her wrist and pulled her behind the cabin, his body shielding hers as another burst of gunfire shattered the driver's side window. Salvatore shouted from the porch, "They're surrounding us!" Luca gritted his teeth. "Then we'll cut through them," Clara's voice cracked. "You can't fight them all." He turned to her, eyes dark and steady. "I don't need to. I just need to buy you time." He reached for the necklace around her neck. "Give it to me," she blinked. "What?" "The locket, Clara. Your father hid something in it. That's why they want you." Tears stung her eyes. "It's all I have left of him." "I know," Luca said quietly. "But if you keep it, they'll kill you for it." Her hands shook as she unclasped it, pressing the cold metal into his palm. "What are you going to do?" He looked down at it. Tiny, delicate, the kind of thing that didn't look dangerous until you knew what it contained. "End this," Salvatore shouted again. "They've got men flanking the ridge." Luca's eyes narrowed. "Good. Let them come." He turned back to Clara, brushing snow from her hair. "If something happens to me, you run. Take the baby. Find Enzo. He'll know what to do." She shook her head, voice trembling. "I can't lose you too." He smiled faintly. "You already lost enough." Then he stood, gun in one hand, locket in the other, and walked out into the storm. Clara watched from behind the cabin as Luca faced the men spilling from the trees. Dark coats, black masks, rifles raised. He raised his voice, calm and cold. "You want her? You'll have to go through me." The leader stepped forward. "We don't need you, Moretti. We just need what she carries." Luca opened his hand, the locket glinting in the headlights. "You mean this?" The man's eyes widened. "Don't—" Luca threw it into the snow and fired. The explosion was small but blinding, a flash of blue light and a deafening crack. The men closest to it were thrown back, the forest lit like day. Clara screamed as the shockwave rippled through the ground. The baby began to cry. When the light faded, the locket was gone. Only smoke and silence remained. Luca staggered to his knees, blood running down his arm. The leader of the attackers lay motionless nearby. Salvatore limped through the snow, rifle still smoking. "It's done," he said quietly. But Luca looked up toward the ridge, his breath freezing in the air. "No," he whispered. "It's just begun. Someone sent them. Someone powerful enough to make this look like the end when it's only the warning." He turned toward Clara, who stood shaking in the falling snow, the baby in her arms. Their eyes met, and in that moment, everything between them changed. Not just fear, not just survival, but something fierce, unspoken, inevitable. Smoke drifted through the trees like a whisper of ghosts. The snow had stopped, but the silence that followed was heavier than any storm. Clara held the baby close as Luca stood over the wreckage, his breath coming in short, sharp bursts. The locket was gone, its secret reduced to ash. But something in Luca's gut told him it wasn't over. Not even close. Salvatore wiped the soot from his face, his voice hoarse. "You shouldn't have destroyed it here." Luca turned sharply. "You said it would end this." "I said it would keep her alive," Salvatore muttered. "But that document, it was a copy. Whoever sent those men still has the original." Luca's eyes darkened. "Then I want a name." Salvatore hesitated, then looked at him gravely. "You won't like it." "I don't care," Luca growled. The old man stepped closer. "It was your father's partner, the one who helped build the Moretti Empire from the shadows. The man who raised you when your father died." Luca froze, every muscle in his body going still. "You're lying," Salvatore met his gaze. "You know I'm not." Luca's voice dropped to a whisper. "Don Marco Bellini." The name hung in the cold air like poison. Clara looked between them, confused. "Who is he?" Luca didn't answer at first. He turned away, fists clenching at his sides. "He was like family, my father's closest ally. When my father died, Marco took me in, taught me everything, how to lead, how to survive. I trusted him." Salvatore's eyes hardened. "And he's been waiting for the day you'd bring the Vega girl back into the open." Clara's heart pounded. "Why? What does he want from me?" "The same thing they all wanted," Luca said quietly. "Control. Power. But Marco isn't like the others. He wants to rewrite the entire code of the families. And the Vegas? Your family's name is the only one that can stop him." She shook her head, disbelief and fear warring in her eyes. "I don't understand. I'm not part of this world. You are now," Luca said softly. Salvatore's voice grew urgent. "He'll come for you both. You need to disappear." Luca turned toward him. "I'm done running. If Marco betrayed my father, if he's behind this, then I'm ending it myself." Salvatore gave him a long, tired look. "You sound just like your father before he died." Clara stepped forward. "Luca, please. You don't have to do this alone." He looked at her, really looked at her. The fear in her eyes, the courage she tried to hide, the way she held her child like a shield and a promise. For a moment, he didn't see a woman caught in a war she never asked for. He saw the reason to end it. He took her hand gently. "I won't let him touch you. Not you, not her." The firelight flickered over his face, half shadow, half steel. Salvatore poured himself a drink, his voice heavy. "If you're going after Marco, you'll need allies. The old ones. The ones who still owe your father favors." Luca nodded. "Then I'll start with the one he trusted most." "Who?" Clara asked softly. "Don Ricci," Luca said. "If he's still alive." Salvatore chuckled darkly. "Alive? Maybe loyal? That's another story." Clara's baby stirred, whimpering in her arms. The sound broke the silence, fragile but grounding. Luca looked at the child, then back at Clara. "You'll be safe here tonight. I'll come back before dawn." She grabbed his hand, voice trembling. "And if you don't?" He smiled faintly. "Then you'll know I went down fighting for something worth more than blood." Clara's voice broke. "Don't say that." He leaned in, his forehead brushing hers for just a heartbeat. "Then give me a reason to come back." She didn't speak, but the way her fingers clutched his said everything. Luca turned, holstered his gun, and walked into the night. The sound of the wind swallowed him whole. Salvatore watched him go, shaking his head. He's walking straight into the lion's den. Clara looked out the window, tears tracing silent paths down her cheeks. Then let's hope the lion remembers who raised him. The city glowed faintly beneath the storm clouds when Luca returned. The streets were slick, the lights smeared across the wet pavement like streaks of fire. Every corner held a shadow, every silence a memory. His coat was heavy with snow and ash as he parked outside an old villa on the northern ridge, Don Ricci's last known hideout. The gate stood open, swinging slightly in the wind. That alone told him something was wrong. Luca stepped out, his boots crunching on gravel. The smell of damp earth and cigarette smoke filled the air. He approached the door slowly, hand on his gun, and pushed it open. Inside, the lights flickered. The once grand hallways were lined with broken glass and fallen portraits. Dust coated everything, but there were fresh footprints on the marble floor. He followed them down the corridor, every step measured, silent. When he reached the study, the door was ajar. A faint glow came from inside. He nudged it open, and froze. Don Ricci sat behind his old mahogany desk, a cigarette burning between his fingers. His silver hair glinted in the dim light, and though age had thinned him, his presence filled the room like a ghost refusing to die. "Luca Moretti," he said without looking up. "I thought I'd never see the day you'd walk through my door." Luca stepped closer. "You're supposed to be dead," Ricci smiled faintly. "A useful rumor. Keeps bullets from finding you too often." Luca studied him for a moment, then said quietly, "I need information." "About Marco Bellini." Ricci's smile vanished. "You shouldn't speak that name in this house." "Why?" Luca asked. "Because it's cursed," Ricci replied. He stubbed out his cigarette, eyes narrowing. "Marco was once my friend. Now he's something else. Something colder." Luca leaned forward. "He ordered the hit on me. On Clara Vega." Ricci's brow furrowed at the name. "Vega? You found her?" Luca's silence was answer enough. The old man sighed, leaning back in his chair. "Your father once told me that if the Vega girl ever crossed your path, the world would start spinning again." Seems he was right. What did he mean? Ricci hesitated, then reached into a drawer. He pulled out a faded photograph and slid it across the desk. "Look at this." Luca picked it up. It was a picture of two men and a woman. His father, a younger Don Ricci, and a woman with gentle eyes. Holding a baby, Luca frowned. "Who is she?" Ricci's eyes softened. "That's Elena Vega, Clara's mother." Luca's heart stilled. "My father knew her?" "Knew her?" Ricci gave a bitter laugh. "He loved her. Before he met your mother, before the war between the families, they were inseparable until Marco poisoned it all. He told your father Elena was working against him, selling information to the Vegas. Your father believed him, and pulled the trigger himself." Luca staggered back, the room spinning. "You're lying," Ricci's voice softened. "You have your father's eyes. I watched him die under the weight of that lie. He found out too late. Marco had orchestrated everything. Elena's death, the Vega massacre, even your father's downfall. He turned everyone into pawns in his own game." Luca's breathing grew shallow. "So Marco, he killed them both, my father and hers." Ricci nodded slowly. "And now he wants to erase the only living reminder of what he did." "That girl and her child." Luca slammed his fist against the desk. "Then I'll kill him myself." The old Don studied him for a long moment, then said, "You'll need proof. Marco doesn't bleed from bullets alone. He bleeds from truth." He handed Luca a small metal key. "Your father's vault, beneath the old cathedral on Via Leone. Everything he kept hidden. Records, confessions, names. It's all there. But beware, boy. Marco knows about it too. He's already sent his men." Luca took the key, his grip tightening around it. "Then I'll get there first." He turned to leave, but Ricci's voice stopped him at the door. "Luca." He looked back. "There's something else," the old man said. "A rumor. They say one of the Vegas survived the fire besides Clara's father. Someone no one ever found." Luca frowned. "What are you saying?" Ricci met his gaze, the faintest ghost of a smile touching his lips. "I'm saying that sometimes ghosts aren't dead. They're just waiting for the right moment to return." Before Luca could respond, a sound shattered the silence, Gunfire outside, sharp and close. Ricci's guards screamed. The windows burst inward. Luca hit the ground, rolling behind the desk as bullets ripped through the room. Ricci drew his revolver, shouting, "He found us!" Luca peered through the smoke and saw them. Men in black coats, masks glinting under the chandelier light. Marco's men. He grabbed Ricci's arm. "We have to move." But Ricci's voice was weak now, blood already seeping through his coat. "Go, boy. End it." Luca's chest tightened. "I'm not leaving you." Ricci gave a faint, dying smirk. "Then don't let me die for nothing." With that, Luca kicked open the side door and disappeared into the night as the villa erupted in flames behind him. The cathedral at Via Leone loomed like a sleeping giant against the night sky, its stone face blackened by years and secrets. Luca moved like a shadow, slipping past the cracked stained glass windows and the weathered gargoyles that watched from above. The key in his pocket felt heavier than metal, like a verdict he had no choice but to deliver. He knew these halls by memory: the hidden service door behind the choir stalls, the narrow stair that descended beneath the altar into cold stone, candles guttered in niches, throwing long, wavering fingers of light that made every step feel sacred and dangerous at once. Clara's baby slept in the car now, bundled under Salvatore's care. Luca's hurry was an attempt to buy them time with the truth. At the bottom of the stair, the vault door sat plain and ordinary, but for him, it was a threshold between what his father had built and what he might now destroy. He fitted the key into the lock. It turned with an old familiar click, like a lock opening in the memory of his life. The heavy door sighed open, and the smell of mildew and old paper hit him. Books and ledgers kept from daylight, shame kept from the world. He let the lamp in his hand sweep across the room. Shelves bowed under the weight of leather-bound books, boxes stamped with names, envelopes tied with string. He walked slowly, as if each step might wake a sleeping accusation. On a small table in the center sat a sealed ledger with his father's crest, the same crest he'd seen his whole life on letters that changed men's fates. He set the lamp down and opened it. Page after careful page listed trades, favors, betrayals, names inked in a hand that had once believed power meant protection. Luca's fingers skimmed across entries until one line stopped him cold. A ledger entry dated years before his father's death, a transaction with Marco Bellini, and a note. Vega contingency secured. Archive under code, L'Ombra. The word was a whisper of history, the shadow. And the notation beside it was worse. Coordinates, a name, and a promise of silence. He moved through the room with a growing sense of cold. There were photographs tucked into folders. Elena Vega smiling at a summer market, young Clara in a faded dress, his father and Marco in better times. Marco's laugh in a frozen image that now felt like a lie. And then, tucked behind a ledger, a small brass case almost missed. The original photograph he'd seen in the mansion, only now the back of it bore handwriting his father had used in private correspondence. A date, a place, and a single line. Keep her close. Power comes with a cost. Luca closed his eyes. Power had cost them all. He thought of Clara, her lullaby, her frightened whisper under his coat, and he realized that the ledger wasn't just proof of crimes. It was a map for whoever wanted control. If Marco had access to this, he could rewrite loyalties, buy enemies, erase allies. If Luca released it, he could destroy the facade of authority his father left behind, or hand a weapon to the man who'd betrayed him. The lamp flickered, as if the vault itself pulled in a breath. A faint, almost mechanical click came from the far corner of the room. He froze, every sense strung taut. Then a whisper of movement, footsteps above ground, a muffled conversation that carried down the stone like distant thunder. Marco's men were moving. Ricci's villa burning had been only the beginning. Someone wanted the ledger, and Luca realized he wasn't the only one who'd read the warning. He gathered what he could: the ledger, a set of smaller envelopes with coded names, and the brass case. As he lifted the case, a hidden compartment popped open. Inside, a flash drive wrapped in a scrap of Elena's dress. His hand shook. The drive had no flourish, no label, just a promise. He slipped it into his pocket, the weight of the city's history settling against his thigh. On the stair back up, he paused and pressed his palm against the cold stone. Truth, he understood, didn't always save people. It exposed them. It made monsters of some and martyrs of others. He walked faster, the vault door closing behind him with a soft, decisive thud that sounded like a gavel. Outside, the night had changed. More cars now, lights slicing the distance. He moved toward the car like a man who expected the worst but hoped for the best. Salvatore met him at the tree line, face grave. "They've moved faster than I thought," the old man said. "Marco's reach is longer than we gave him credit for." Luca held up the drive. "This is everything." He wanted to rewrite history. He burned Ricci's house to keep people from reading it. Salvatore's eyes narrowed. "If Marco gets that, he controls the ledger and everyone who signed under your father." "Then he has to be stopped," Luca said. "Not by vengeance, but by truth. By making them answer for what they've done." They drove back through the sleeping city. Clara's eyes were hollow with worry when he climbed into the car, the baby in her lap. He looked at her, and the exhaustion on her face broke something open in him, a tenderness he hadn't planned on feeling. "I found it," he said simply. "We don't have to run without knowing what we fight for." She nodded, little more than a whisper. "Just promise me one thing." He looked at her. The world narrowed to the baby's soft breath and the tremor of her fingers. "Anything. Come back," she said. "Come back to us." He didn't answer with words. He only watched the road. The ledger heavy in his bag like a heart he hadn't realized he was carrying. Somewhere on that drive, he decided he would not hand the city's future to a man who betrayed families for power. He would take the ledger, expose the lies, and if the cost was burning his name to ash, then he would burn it willingly. If this part tightened your chest, leave A in the comments, because in the next part, Luca will force Marco to choose, silence or ruin. They arrived at dawn, when the city still smelled like rain and old promises. Marco's stronghold sat behind high walls and cameras, a fortress dressed as a villa. Luca killed the engine and watched the stone face of the place as if it were the face of a man he once called uncle. He had the ledger, the drive, and a single terrible plan. Force Marco to choose between silence and ruin. Salvatore stayed with Clara in the car, eyes on the rearview mirror like a hawk. Clara clutched the baby to her chest, exhaustion and fear braided into one. "Promise me you'll come back," she whispered again, small and fierce. Luca reached for her hand, gave it one quick squeeze, and walked toward the gate. He moved through the hallways like a man who'd memorized every crooked smile on this route. Marco greeted him in the study with perfumed calm, as if the world still obeyed his etiquette. "Luca," he said, like a question that never needed an answer. "To what do I owe this pleasure?" Luca didn't sit. He placed the drive on the desk, let it clack against the leather. "You know why I'm here." Marco's eyes flicked to the drive, then closed as if savoring an old sorrow. "So you finally found the truth behind your father's ledger. I'd hoped you'd never open it. You burned Ricci's house to keep it hidden." Luca's voice was low, controlled. "You sent men to kill a girl and a child so no one could read what my father wrote." Marco laughed once, short and wrong. "Your father wrote what he needed to keep. He did what men like us must do." Luca stepped forward. "Then choose." "What choice?" Marco asked. "Silence," Luca said simply, "or ruin. You can walk away, take whatever power you have left and disappear. Or I hand everything on this drive to the newspaper, to the police, to every family that's been bought and sold by these pages. You'll lose everything you built. You'll be stripped bare in the eyes of the city." Marco's smile thinned. His fingers drummed the desk like a metronome. "You think you can blackmail me with my own ledger?" "I'm not blackmailing you." Luca's face softened in a way that surprised even him. "I'm offering you a chance to stop the rot. You either make amends quietly, or you let the ledger be the spear that ends this generation's lies." Marco's eyes flicked to the window. For a heartbeat, Luca saw a man who had loved power so much that it had hollowed him out. Then Marco reached under the desk and, as if expecting a pistol, produced a small recorder. "You're naive," he said. "You think truth heals? It destroys. Then destroy me if you want," Luca said. "But remember what you'll be destroying." There was a pause long enough for the city to exhale. Outside, a car door shut softly. Salvatore had taken Clara to a safe house 2 blocks away. Luca pictured her face, the baby's tiny fist curling around Clara's thumb. That image steadied him. Marco stood, his silhouette tall and dangerous. You were always your father's son. He died believing he could buy absolution. He stepped closer, voice colder. Absolution doesn't exist. Then, unexpectedly, Marco laughed, the sound brittle. Very well. If you want the ledger out, do it. Hand it to the press, to the cops. Let the city eat itself. He picked up the recorder and dropped it on the table. Do your worst, Luca. Luca took the drive, slid it into his pocket, and walked out. He didn't call the police. He didn't make threats. He drove to a small cafe 2 streets away, sat at a window table, and placed a single anonymous email to a journalist who had been hungry for truth for years. 1 line, a file attached, and a single instruction. Publish everything at 10 a.m. Then, he sent copies to 2 trusted lawyers and 1 old friend of Ricci's who loved the city, more than the families that bled it. At 9:58, the city hummed with ordinary life. At 10:03, the first headline dropped. Moretti Ledger, names, deals, betrayals, the city's secret paper trail. Phones erupted. News vans converged. Within an hour, Marco's empire was a house of cards on live television. Accounts frozen, property liens filed, allies distancing themselves in flurries of denial. Men who once dined together now used the same streets and pretended not to know one another. Marco stood at his balcony, watching his world collapse with the same careful face he'd used to command loyalty. Luca watched from a distance, throat raw but not unrelieved. He had not killed Marco. He had weaponized truth. He had left the choice to the city, and the city chose to burn the rotten center out. In the hours that followed, men in suits were arrested, others quietly fled, and families that had trafficked in fear found themselves exposed, their names no longer whispered but printed for all to read. The ledger did what it promised. It changed the rules. It did not erase violence, but it made it visible. It forced accountability, messy and incomplete, but nonetheless real. Days later, when the dust settled into a new reality, Luca returned to the safe house. Clara opened the door before he could knock. The baby was on her shoulder, asleep. She looked at him like a person who had spent a winter and now saw spring light for the first time in a long while. Did it work? She asked simply. He stepped inside and closed the door, the sound a small, precious thing. Not perfectly, but it's a start. She studied him, searching for the man who'd walked away from Ricci's burning villa. What will you do now? He set the ledger on the table, then shut the drawer. I'll stay. I'll protect you. I'll rebuild what I can, but not the old way. He sat down across from her, tired in a way that pressed into his bones. I'll spend the rest of my life making sure no more girls stand on platforms in the snow and ask strangers for warmth. Clara's laugh was quiet and astonished. You really mean that? He reached for her hand. I mean, I'll try. That's all we can do, try. Outside, the city was changing. New leaders rose where old ones fell. There were betrayals yet to be settled, and blood that could not be washed away. But hidden rooms were opened. Apologies stumbled into being. And for the first time in decades, families with power felt the heat of being held accountable. That night, when the baby woke and Clara hummed the same lullaby she'd sung in the tunnel, Luca heard it and felt something like peace. It was small, fragile, a breath held and finally released. He sat with them in the dim light, the shape of a future he hadn't planned on forming around him. A family stitched together from unlikely threads. If this moment moved you, tap like and let me know in the comments which line hit you hardest. Your voice helps these stories find more hearts. If you want to keep getting tales like this, subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next chapter of lives changed by one choice. And tell me below, who was the real villain? Marco, the ledger, or the idea that power could fix everything? Your thoughts mean a lot.